When I was in middle school, flash games were all the rage. I'm talking Line Rider, Fancy Pants, Heli Attack 3. Like many households, my parents had the rule that we couldn't so much as think about video games or TV until all our chores and homework were done. Well, my brothers and I would come home from school and race through all our youthful obligations, itching for the boot up sound of our dated Windows XP PC. We'd clickety-clack our way over to Miniclip, Newgrounds, and the unforgettable, addicting games, and be met with an endless wellspring of possibilities. Did you want to run around as a ninja collecting golden cubes? You got it. What about shooting a stickman with a bow and arrow using your mouse? Why not? Game after game presented itself to us, unbidden and spontaneous, and though many of them were painfully unremarkable, even to my affable 12-year-old judgment, there are some whose memory I still hold dear and near. One such game was Motherlode. My brothers and I would spend hours exploring the subterranean mines of Motherlode's Adobe Flash Martian world. Well, times changed. I moved on from Flash games and enjoyed plenty of other games throughout my years, but it wasn't until recently that I realized the seeds of satisfaction that Motherlode planted lay dormant, eager to be rediscovered.
I 100% share your sentiment on Motherlode. Anyone who's played the game can acknowledge the simple yet addictive gameplay loop of digging is so well done. But what if we told you there was a game that made all of this look like child's play? A game that takes the essence of Motherlode, sprinkles on a generous amount of missile command magic, and turns it all up to 11. Enter Dome Keeper. Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Game Club. I'm Graham.
And I'm George.
And this is our review of Dome Keeper. You begin your tenure as an engineer, a dome keeper, by crash landing on a hostile alien world. When the dust settles, you find yourself inside the dome, and notice the crash landing created a hole on the surface of the planet. The player is placed right above this hole, a subtle beacon to what lies underneath. There's a console inside the dome that you could interact with should you so choose. Were you to indulge, you'd quickly find that all the options are locked behind a currency which you do not yet possess. So, equipped with a drill and a jetpack, you dig down, burying deeper and deeper underground, completely unaware of what you'll find. Currently, Dome Keeper has no story or plot, save an unlikely addition post-launch, yet even without a story, a type of narrative evolves. The world feels alien, and the music otherworldly. You stand in isolation, with the surface of the planet barren of life. Additionally, the HUD is minimal and unintrusive. There's no opening tutorial to tell you where to go or what to do. Instead, you're set free to explore and experiment, nothing to jeopardize the feeling of immersion. Before long, you find a shiny bit of treasure, and whether you interacted with the console or not, you naturally know to bring it up to the dome. However, suddenly, an icon on your screen starts flashing, a rudimentary warning system. Once again, you know, head up to the dome. As you're racing, you start to hear the cracking and bending of metal and glass. And to your horror, the once empty surface of the planet is empty no longer. A giant beast is thrashing against the surface of your dome.
Whether you die on your first round or on your 10th, the game knows you'll be back for more. And even though each new individual world is random, you begin to familiarize yourself with the game and start to intuit the possible patterns Dome Keeper can present. In fact, most of the game is incredibly intuitive, but more on that later. Much like primeval man, you tentatively venture forth from the safety of your cave, or dome, but as you lose and learn, you soon find you have become the master of this domain, seamlessly weaving between the conqueror of the world below and the keeper of the dome above. We want to state it as plainly as possible. This game is amazing. It's developed by Bippinbits, a studio comprised of a husband and wife duo that just knock it out of the park. The game does credit some additional people who were sure provided invaluable assistance, but the creativity brimming within Bippinbits is absolutely outstanding. Initially conceived as Dome Romantic, a 72-hour game jam entry, Dome Keeper has grown and matured into something extraordinary. We can't understate how much fun we had with this game. Currently, there's 2 game modes, with a plan for a third, but we'll touch on that later. For now, let's focus on the main mode. It's a relic hunt in which you dig down in search of a mystical relic, whose purpose is to, well, we'll just let you figure that one out. What you do is you dig down for resources, minerals as they're called in game, come back up to the dome so you can use said resources for upgrades, and defend the dome against wave after wave of alien monsters. And while we're on the topic, let's talk minerals. You have iron, a common blockish geode universally useful across all upgrades. Cobalt, the ever-elusive triangles with unique defensive abilities. And water, a finite resource relegated to enhancing your gadgets, some of the more unique upgrades in the game. How often you find each of the minerals varies from run to run, and it will influence the upgrades available to you, but they're used for anything ranging from the strength of the laser to the speed of the engineer. They're the whole reason you dig, and your key to success in the dome. As the waves go along, you're able to venture deeper into the mines, while the alien hordes above get stronger and stronger. It's a simple loop, but trust me, it's ridiculously addictive. One of the key factors for this is how well the game keeps you engaged. There are options and decisions presented to you at every given moment, and because you're often pressed for time, the most precious resource of all, they often require you to commit. However, no single decision will make or break a run. Sometimes that's the case, but more often than not, it's a series of micro decisions that will determine the outcome. And because you make them so often, it provides a great opportunity for strategy and optimization. For example, there's dirt that's harder than others and takes longer to dig. So, do you risk time to see what's on the other side, or do you move on to a softer area? Then there's the upgrades. What should you select? Something to make your digging more efficient, or your dome better? Maybe you opt for neither and decide to upgrade the plethora of gadgets that change the way you play. And sometimes, the better play is to upgrade nothing at all and save your resources for a better upgrade down the line. But even that runs a risk. What if you don't get the required resources on the next dive?
Even the simple act of bringing your hull back up to the dome is a mini-game that keeps you on your toes. The minerals you mine have weight, they slow you down, so as the next wave of aliens approaches, you have to decide. Do you bring the entirety of your hull, running the risk of arriving late to properly defend your dome? Do you strategically drop some of it to make you go faster? And be careful of your navigation, as you don't want to snag and drop more loot. Also, were you paying attention to which way you dug? Because if not, coming back up is going to be another challenge, as there's no map to guide you. All this to say, engagement is at the heart of the game, and it's executed flawlessly. Yes, digging in games has its own charm, and there are other games that incorporate their own combat, some not dissimilar to Dome Keeper, but it's Dome Keeper seamlessly intertwining these two aspects upon the bedrock of engagement that makes it special. In a post about some of their inspirations and approach to monster design, the developer said this: "Take a look at this walker. It comes in very fast and starts beating on your dome, but it's pretty straightforward, right? So when it comes to creating other monsters, well, we could have just made a bigger walker. Maybe one that's a little bit slower, but a little bit stronger. But honestly, that just doesn't appeal to us. What's the point of taking the same kind of enemy with the same kind of strategy? It's not about giving you different monsters as much as it's about giving you varying challenges." This philosophy for change, for providing something new and different, is something that permeates throughout the entire game. For one, we definitely agree that the monsters in Dome Keeper are diverse. We won't show all of them, but their attack patterns and the strategies for dealing with them are just as varied and unique. It's more than just monsters though. The upgrades and gadgets you can acquire really lend themselves to different playstyles and provide a healthy mix of challenges. In fact, speaking of gadgets, you can use them to provide a perfect example for this philosophy. As you mine along, you'll inevitably find them, the gadgets. As you bring them up, you'll notice that they slow you down a little. A keen eye will perceive that the slowness is actually independent from the slowness provided by the load of materials. It's a different thing, therefore its effect on the player is also different. They could have very easily taken the easy route and just said, okay, this is about 4 times the size of a material, so why not give it 4 times weight? Easy. Done. No one would have blamed them for taking that route, but they took a more impressive approach and purposely decided not to do that. It's this attention to detail and desire to provide something new, even with something as inconspicuous as that, is really what sets Domekeeper apart from the rest.
Earlier, we compared this game to Motherlode and Missile Command, and we'd argue that the straightforward, arcade-like fun of those games is definitely present in Domekeeper's DNA, but to call this game an arcade game would be an unfair pigeonhole. In fact, to pigeonhole this simply as a roguelike or survival game would also be unfair. There are definitely elements of those games present, and they do aid with a quick elevator pitch of the game, but Domekeeper is an island unto itself. However, for our purposes today, we will borrow a term sometimes ascribed to arcade games: grockability. Grok. The term was coined by science fiction author Robert Heinlein, probably best known for Starship Troopers, and it means to understand something intuitively or by empathy. Intuitively being the key word for this review. Aside from some really small and unobtrusive tutorials, this game is light on direction. And even those little tutorials that do pop up never stop gameplay. We'd argue there's 2 reasons for that. First, your intelligence is respected and the devs trust you'll figure it out. If something's not immediately apparent, you're encouraged to interact with it and experiment to see what it does. The second, which one could argue is probably the main one, is the game simply doesn't need a tutorial. You often just need to see a thing once to know what's gonna happen. Domekeeper is tearing at the seams with grockability, and we have the game's exceptional visual and audio design to thank for this. Case in point, take the hardness of the rocks. Some rocks are harder than others, which you'll soon discover as you mine underground. As you play, you'll start to notice a trend and realize the designs on the rock face mean different things. Without the game giving you an explicit tutorial, you memorize the designs on the rock face and can strategize accordingly. And the best part in all this, the rocks all look like rocks. It's not a sea of colors down there or whatever one could choose to differentiate hardness, and everything is keeping with the theme. It may seem like a small detail, but one that I wanted to highlight because it demonstrates my point exactly. Another example would be load capacity. When you're at full load capacity of what you can carry, you slow down but still remain mobile enough. Were you to exceed that capacity, you stop completely and can't move. There's no capacity bar or HUD indication that you reach that limit. Instead, what you get is a subtle clue via the sound of your jetpack, warning you of your max capacity. Soon, you associate this sound with the strain on your jetpack, and no matter what your current capacity may be, you know when you've reached its limit.
It's this level of polish layered throughout that I think will draw a lot of players to the game. And speaking of sound design, it cannot be understated. It's the unsung star of the show. Just take a listen to these. The sound design in this game is phenomenal. The zap of the laser, the crunch of the rock, even the melodic clanks of the materials bouncing. There's a sound for everything. It's great, it works, and we are here for it. Let's talk technical details real quick. Both George and I experienced a few stutters throughout our playthrough. Nothing game nor immersion breaking, and we almost didn't include it. It was so minor. But if you have a high sensitivity for this kind of thing, we just wanted to let you know. There's also a few bugs with the borderless windowed and windowed mode not quite working right. Again, this was not game breaking, and truth be told, it feels like one of those things that will be patched sooner or later. But we wanted to be upfront about it. Then there's the issue of balance. Like we said earlier, there are 2 game modes currently in the game. There are plans for a third mode called Migration, but that's scheduled to be post-launch, so any details on that will have to wait. The second mode is called Prestige. You unlock it by winning a round of the first main mode, Relic Hunt, which, after each victory, I love that they give you the options on what to unlock. They don't unlock things for you in a set order, they just give you the choice. I think it's a nice touch. The goal of Prestige mode is to survive as long as you can and send as many materials back home as possible. We'll let you discover the full details of this on your own, but one of the appeals of this mode is it has a leaderboard. Well, herein lies one of the only real problems with the game: balance. And problem isn't even the right word because this may not even affect a large majority of the players. The thing is, the gadgets you find fundamentally change the way each run goes. Unfortunately, the balance between these gadgets is all over the place. There are some that far outclass others. And I foresee that the relative variance between the boons that the gadgets provide will cause players to want to restart if they don't get the good gadgets. In Relic Hunt, this is something that doesn't really apply, and the competition is between you and the world. But for a mode where you're competing against other players, the broader the variance, the worse it is. This is why we hesitate to call it a problem per se, as this is something that really only applies when you're looking at the upper echelons of the leaderboard, or you're that type of player that wants to go for the perfect run every time. A counterpoint to this is, just as we noted earlier, one of the great merits of this game is its attention to variance. It is committed to provide different challenges. So even though the balance bell curve could be tightened up a bit, the game achieves the goal. So to reiterate, we don't believe this is something the majority of players will have a problem with, but if you're the type of player that wants to go for the perfect runs, just know you might find yourself restarting when you don't get the strongest gadgets right off the bat. At the end of the day though, I'm not too worried. Given everything that we've seen so far, this studio has earned my trust, and if they find something that deviates from their vision, they'll definitely address it. At the end of our reviews, we'd like to look at all the aspects of the game that we analyzed and give a letter grade to each, going from S to D. This will give everyone a really solid idea of what we thought about each part.
This will differ game to game, as each game has its own merits, and we only want to highlight the things appropriate for that game.
And so, here are my grades for the overall aspects of the game.
And here are mine.
And my overall ranking for this game is a very solid S rank.
I'm right there with you on this one, Graham. My ranking for this game is also a very strong and solid S rank.
Nice.
Sometimes our category rankings or even overall rankings may differ between George and I, but this time we're definitely on the same page. Well, the Game Club's very first review, and for Dome Keeper no less, this game has been an absolute gem. I think I played the demo a couple months ago for like 15 hours. I was so hooked, and so I'm really glad we were able to review it.
Yeah, dude, this game is amazing. It's going to be one of the sleeper hits of 2022, I bet. And the craziest thing we just have to get out there is this game is only 18 bucks. There's even a sale right now for 10% off, which is just insane to me. 18 bucks USD for all that you're getting right now. There's already some post-launch content announced. So it's crazy what you're getting out of this game. It's amazing.
Yeah, the game's only out on Steam right now, but I could see this easily being a great game for the Switch or even the Steam Deck, which actually I've been playing a little bit. The game runs flawlessly on the Steam Deck. I did notice on PC, after like many hours of playing, that I started to run into some visual glitches with the UI and even some of the gadgets stacking. But I mean, this is like a lot of playtime in, and it didn't really affect my play too much. And this is easily something that could be fixed even before launch or just after, so I wouldn't worry too much.
Yeah, the dev's really active on like the Steam forums and stuff. I'm sure he'll be listening to a lot of the feedback. And speaking of the dev, he's actually agreed to come on our podcast. So if that's something that interests you, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, because we'll have him as a guest on the podcast and we'll be able to ask him many of the things about Dome Keeper that we're just itching to talk about.
Yeah, I can't wait. I can't believe that he's going to be a guest on our podcast so we can talk with him and ask him a bunch of questions. It's very exciting stuff.
As I'm sure you guys can imagine, the post-launch window is almost as busy as the pre-launch window, so it'll be a few weeks till we have him on here, but just stay tuned. And with that, thank you so much for watching, everyone. It's been an absolute pleasure to review this game, and we'll catch you on the next one.
See you then.